My fiancée mocked my pathetic salary and embarrassing apartment when she was drunk with friends. I pretended not to hear. The next day I took her to my real house, a waterfront property I own and rent out. Then I showed her my investment portfolio. She's been calling non-stop since I dropped her off at her parents' house. I should probably start by explaining why I lived in a modest apartment despite owning significantly more valuable property. My grandfather built a successful construction business from nothing. He came to America with $8 in his pocket and died owning half the commercial buildings in our town. He taught me two principles that shaped my life. Never show all your cards at once, and the right partner values you, not your assets. I took both lessons to heart. When my parents died in a car accident 6 years ago, I inherited everything: the family business, real estate holdings, and investment portfolios that my father had expanded from my grandfather's foundation. On paper, I'm worth 8 figures. In practice, I've kept that information private. I live comfortably but modestly, drive a 3-year-old Audi instead of a Ferrari, wear a nice but not ostentatious watch. The one-bedroom apartment I've lived in for the past 5 years is in a decent neighborhood, clean and well-maintained, but nothing special. My friends know I'm doing well, but not the extent of it. I've always preferred it that way. I met Catherine at a charity event 2 years ago. She was working for the nonprofit hosting the event. Smart, ambitious, with a quick wit that caught my attention immediately. Our first date was coffee, then dinner the following week. Things progressed naturally from there. When she eventually saw my apartment, she seemed slightly surprised but didn't comment directly. Later, she admitted she'd expected something more impressive, given my position as owner of a construction company. I explained that I preferred to keep things simple, that I believed in living below my means. She seemed to accept this, even admired it as refreshingly unpretentious. 8 months ago, I proposed. She said yes. We began planning a fall wedding. Everything was perfect until last Saturday night. Catherine was hosting a girls' night at her apartment. I was supposed to be out with my friends, but my plans fell through. I texted her that I might stop by later to say hello. She replied with a thumbs up. Around 10 p.m., I arrived at her building. I could hear laughter from her third-floor apartment as I climbed the stairs. Her door was slightly ajar. They'd probably been going in and out to smoke on the balcony. I was about to knock when I heard my name. "So what does Richard actually do all day?" one of the voices asked. Jessica, Catherine's college friend. "Like he owns the company, but does he actually work?" Catherine's laugh was loose, relaxed, the way she sounds 3 glasses of wine in. "Honestly, I have no idea. He goes to meetings, checks on job sites, but his father built the business, not him. And he lives in that tiny apartment. Why? Is he just super cheap?" Another voice, Melissa, Catherine's co-worker. "God, it's embarrassing," Catherine said. "When he first took me there, I thought it was some kind of joke, like he was going to say, 'Just kidding,' and take me to his real place." They all laughed. "I mean, he makes what, $80K a year?" Jessica again. "He won't say exactly. Probably doesn't want to admit how pathetic it is. The company barely stays afloat. His dad's old clients keep them in business. He could sell it, but he's too sentimental." I stood frozen outside the door. We discussed my business, of course. I'd been honest about running the company my father built, but I'd been deliberately vague about the financials. Not because the business was struggling, it had quadrupled in value under my management, but because I wasn't ready to reveal everything. The conversation continued. "So why are you marrying him?" Melissa asked. "You always said you wanted security." There was a pause. I found myself holding my breath. "He's nice," Catherine said finally. "Stable. And the construction company has potential if he'd just be more aggressive with it. Plus, his family built half the commercial district. There must be some inheritance or property somewhere he doesn't talk about." "So you're banking on hidden assets?" Jessica laughed. "Not banking on it, but it wouldn't surprise me. And anyway, I can help him make something of the business. He needs someone with actual ambition." "If you say so," Melissa said skeptically. "I couldn't handle that apartment. How do you even entertain there?" "Where will you live after you're married?" "We're looking at places," Catherine said. "I've been pushing for Lakeview Terraces. He says it's out of our budget, but once we're married, I'll have a better picture of the finances. I'm sure there's more than he lets on. I'd heard enough. I silently backed away from the door and left the building. Walked around the block several times, processing what I'd heard. Then I texted Catherine. Plans canceled earlier than expected, but you guys sound like you're having fun. Don't want to interrupt. See you tomorrow. Her reply came quickly. Ah, wish you'd come by. See you tomorrow, babe. I went home to my embarrassing apartment and made a decision. The next morning, I picked Catherine up as planned for what she thought was a brunch date. She was slightly hungover, but in good spirits. No mention of last night's conversation, of course. Change of plans, I said. There's something I want to show you before we eat. She raised an eyebrow but didn't object. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of a 4,500 square foot waterfront home with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wraparound deck. Whose house is this? She asked, taking in the luxury SUV in the driveway and the manicured lawn. Clients of yours? Mine, actually, I said casually, punching a code into the security gate. I've owned it for about 5 years. She stared at me, then at the house, then back at me. What are you talking about? I own this house. I rent it out to a surgeon and his family. They're away this weekend, so I thought I'd finally show you. Her expression was priceless. Confusion, disbelief, then the dawn of realization. You own this place? But you live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Yes. I parked in front of the 3-car garage. Would you like to see inside? The tour took 20 minutes. Every feature, the gourmet kitchen, the home theater, the primary suite with its absurd bathroom, the dock with space for a 40-foot boat, seemed to render Catherine more speechless. She trailed behind me, occasionally touching things as if to verify they were real. Finally, in the book-lined study overlooking the water, she found her voice. Richard, I don't understand. Why would you live in that apartment if you own this? This is an investment property, I explained. It generates income. I own 7 others like it. 7? She whispered. Well, not exactly like it. Each property is different. I have commercial buildings as well, 4 downtown, 1 in the University District, and a small apartment complex on the north side. She sank into one of the leather chairs, her face pale beneath her makeup. How much are you worth? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into my investment account, and turned the screen toward her. Her eyes widened as she saw the number. 8 figures, not counting the real estate holdings. This is separate from the construction company, I clarified, which, by the way, has tripled its commercial contracts in the past 4 years and is anything but barely afloat. Her head snapped up, eyes suddenly wary. What do you mean? I heard you last night, I said quietly. At your apartment. The door was open, and I was about to knock when I heard you talking about my pathetic salary and embarrassing apartment, about how you'd help me make something of my family's business. The color drained from her face. Richard, I was drunk. The girls were pressuring me. I held up a hand. The interesting thing is, you weren't wrong about there being assets I hadn't disclosed. You were just wrong about why. I closed the laptop. My grandfather taught me to never show all my cards at once and to make sure any partner valued me, not what I owned. Of course I value you, she protested, tears forming. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything. I interrupted, my voice still calm. You see, I've been considering whether to sell this house. The couple renting it is interested in buying. Now I know I should, but not for the reason you might think. She looked confused. I should sell it because you know about it now, I explained, and I prefer to own things you don't know about. The full impact of what I was saying hit her then. She stood up shakily. You can't be serious? You're breaking up with me because of some stupid drunk comments? I'm breaking up with you because you're marrying me for potential access to assets you suspected existed. Assets you planned to get a better picture of once we were legally bound. That's not a partnership, Catherine. That's a business transaction. I closed my laptop and secured it in my briefcase with a combination lock. Years of handling sensitive business information had made digital security second nature to me. I never left financial information accessible, even briefly. That's not fair, she said, tears now falling freely. I love you. You love who you thought I could become with your guidance, not who I am. The drive back was painfully silent. Instead of taking her to her apartment, I drove to her parents' house. They weren't particularly close, but I knew they were home. This conversation needed to be final, and I didn't want to risk her showing up at my apartment later. As we pulled up, she turned to me. "You're making a huge mistake." I misspoke. It was the wine talking. "No," I said quietly. "Wine doesn't create thoughts, it just lowers the inhibition to speak them. Your friends heard the real Catherine last night. So did I." I handed her the ring box. I'd retrieved the engagement ring from her finger the previous night while she slept, replacing it with the empty box on her nightstand with a note saying we needed to talk about our future. She'd texted me about it that morning, confused but yet alarmed. I'd simply replied that we'd discuss it when I picked her up. She probably assumed it was about wedding plans. "Richard, please. I'll have your things from my apartment packed and sent here. Anything I've left at your place, please donate. You can't just..." Goodbye, Catherine. That was yesterday. Since then, my phone has logged 47 calls and 36 text messages from her. Emails, voicemails, DMs on every platform we're connected on. I haven't responded to any of them. Her messages have evolved predictably. Anger, "You manipulated me." Bargaining, "We can work through this." Rationalization, "I was just trying to impress my friends." And now, desperation, "Please give me another chance." She showed up at my office this morning. My assistant, who knew we'd broken up but not why, politely told her I was unavailable. She waited in the lobby for 3 hours before security finally escorted her out. Part of me feels cruel. The rational part knows this is for the best. A foundation built on such fundamental deception couldn't support a healthy marriage. I've canceled the venue and notified the key people involved in wedding preparations. Most have been understanding. Some, primarily her friends, have texted angry messages. Apparently I've humiliated her. Perhaps I have, but I'd argue she humiliated herself. Last night, I sat on the deck of my waterfront house. The surgeon and his family won't return until next week, watching the sunset and reflecting on my grandfather's wisdom. The right partner values you, not your assets. Catherine failed that test spectacularly. This morning, I spoke with a real estate agent about listing my apartment. Time for a change of scenery. Not to display wealth or status, but because there's no longer a reason to maintain the test. The next woman I date will see the real me from the beginning, financially and otherwise. The irony isn't lost on me that Catherine was right about one thing. There was more to my finances than I let on. Just not for the reasons she assumed, and certainly not for her to access and direct. My phone buzzes with another call from her. I silence it and turn back to the water. Some lessons are expensive. This one cost her a relationship and a lifestyle she didn't know was within reach. It cost me time and trust. I'm not sure which of us paid more. Edit, this blew up more than expected. Some clarifications based on comments. 1. Yes, I probably should have been more transparent about my financial situation earlier. I recognize that keeping this information private for so long wasn't entirely fair. The apartment wasn't a test. Originally, it was where I lived when my parents died, and I stayed partly from inertia, partly from desire for privacy. 2. Several people have asked if there were red flags before this incident. Looking back, there were subtle indicators. Her pushing for expensive restaurants when I suggested more modest options. Comments about upgrading my wardrobe. Suggesting I needed to be more aggressive in business without understanding our strategy or market position. 3. No, I'm not just looking for a woman who doesn't care about money. Financial compatibility is important. What I want is someone who values financial responsibility, who can discuss money openly without seeing me as an ATM or a project to be managed. 4. To those saying I overreacted, perhaps. But remember, this wasn't just about her being embarrassed by my apartment. It was about her explicitly stating she was marrying me, in part to access assets she suspected existed, planning to get a better picture of the finances after marriage, and believing she needed to help me make something of my family's business, all while mocking my perceived financial status to her friends. Update. 2 weeks later, Catherine's campaign to reconcile has intensified. She sent a handwritten 12-page letter explaining she'd been insecure about our future, that her friends made her feel inadequate about our lifestyle. She showed up at the waterfront house yesterday. Apparently, she'd followed me there once during our relationship when she was concerned about where I was going. The tenants were confused, but turned her away. Her parents called, apologizing for her behavior and asking if we could all meet to talk. I declined politely. Her father hinted that they'd always thought I had potential, which only confirmed I'd made the right decision. Meanwhile, I've made an offer on a new place. Not ostentatious, but a substantial upgrade from my apartment. 3 bedrooms, downtown views, walking distance to my office. With the contract pending, I've started packing up my apartment, ready for this next chapter. More importantly, I've started being more transparent with friends about my financial situation. Not flaunting wealth, just not actively hiding it either. It feels surprisingly liberating. Catherine's most recent text: "You're punishing me for not being a mind reader. How was I supposed to know your real situation if you deliberately hid it?" I finally replied, "It wasn't a test until you failed it. I wasn't hiding wealth, I was waiting to share it with someone who loved me regardless." She hasn't responded to that. Perhaps she finally understands. Final update, 6 months later. Life has settled into a new pattern. I completed the purchase of my downtown condo and moved in 3 months ago after some custom renovations. I've sold 2 investment properties to expand the business and have been more authentic in all my relationships. Catherine eventually stopped contacting me after I had my lawyer send a formal request. Through mutual friends, I heard she's dating a doctor now, apparently making sure to verify his financial status up front this time. The waterfront house is still being rented by the same surgeon and his family. They decided not to buy after all. Sometimes I go there when it's vacant between tenants, sit on the deck, and think about how differently things might have gone. My grandfather would probably say I dodged a bullet. I think he's right, but it still leaves a mark. Not every valuable lesson comes without cost. But better to pay that price before signing a marriage certificate than after. For those who asked if I'm dating again, yes, recently started seeing someone. Second date, I gave her a tour of one of my commercial properties when we happened to walk by it. Her response: "This is very impressive, but does this mean all our dates will include real estate tours? Because I was hoping for mini golf next time." I think Grandpa would approve.